Welcome to episode...
You're so funny. No.
I know.
Welcome to episode 17 of the DevDecoder podcast. And as usual, Rebecca is bursting with joy and happiness of being here for another episode to talk about technology.
Woo!
Is this
Hi.
because you've got some particularly exciting news this week?
No.
You're just happy in general?
Yes.
Cannot wait to see what this week's podcast reveals.
I'm very excited this week.
Why?
Well, you know how I've suddenly become an extreme gamer?
Okay, yeah. Not sure you extremely can. Yeah, okay, but yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
I've not actually played it for a while. I'm a bit gutted. I've got too into Desperate Housewives, but that's a topic for another time.
Yeah. Please, let's put that off for as long as humanly possible. Preferably until after I'm dead.
Anyway, some exciting news.
Yes.
Retro gaming is back.
Retro gaming has been back for quite a long time.
Well, it's properly back now.
Why is it properly back now? What has changed retro gaming from being an accepted form of entertainment that's been around for a while to now actually being in the Rebecca zeitgeist?
They're releasing a PlayStation 1 Mini.
Yes,
A little mini
indeed.
one.
Actually, I'm quite excited about this too because I've got the SNES, which I think you'll remember is different from the NES.
The same thing.
We already proved this one. And I've also got the Mega Drive Mini. So I too am quite excited to see. So yeah, I'm quite excited to see the PlayStation one. When's it coming out?
It's coming out in December before Christmas, so I know what my Christmas present's going to be.
Well, you better hope that your boyfriend watches the vodcast occasionally. So
He doesn't.
He doesn't. That's a shame. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the PlayStation 1, it's funny because it's, as we were talking about just last time, I think it was, it's been 20 years since the PlayStation came out, nearly. So the idea that the Mini's out now is probably timely. But considering how advanced the machine it was back then, to see it it's just incredible to see how fast technology moves on.
I think it's only got like 20 games on it though.
Yeah, I think the other ones come out like 40 or 60 games, don't they? So it's a little bit disappointing. To be honest, I was never a PlayStation fan. I had a PS3. I didn't have a PS1 or 2. I haven't got a PS4. I did have all the Xboxes. Although I haven't got the latest Xbox either because I've largely been PC gaming now for the last 5 or 6 years. It's just always been ahead and it's remained ahead. So I've just not felt the need to go out and buy a console, to be honest, because I'd rather just play with a upscale PC game. I'm not the only one though. You know, Mike Tyson isn't a PlayStation fan either.
How do you even know that?
Well, he's an ex-boxer.
Oh my god. Rebecca's Back to the Podcast. So did you know an octopus lays 56,000 eggs at a time?
Yeah, they lay loads and loads, yeah. Yeah, I did do biology at university.
What's that got to do with octopuses?
Well, I read stuff. Most of them die.
Right, I want another one. Out of all the states in America, there's only one letter that isn't used. Name that letter.
It's only one?
Yeah.
I've heard this before because there's a challenge, isn't there? So we could figure it out, but I'm guessing... Well, I know it's not going to be Z. Because there's... No, actually, which one has Z?
I've never seen two people look so confused. Nope.
It's not A, it's not B, C, D, E, no F.
He's stumped. Both of them are
Q.
stumped. I feel so factual right now.
It's something weird like... No, it's not U. Is it Q? No, it's not Q. Because, wait, Q... Which state has Q in it? I have heard this one because there's a joke where it says name a state with that letter in it and you can't get it. But, right, so there's Albuquerque.
And we're going to go through all of them. Every single letter. 26 letters. You've got 2 seconds. Name that letter. 1, 2.
C.
Seriously? C?
Z.
No, Arizona.
Arizona, yeah, of course.
It's Q!
Q! Oh, that was I said Q.
It wasn't your guess. You said Z.
I did say Q, and then I was like, which one's got Q in it?
You can't spin this. I asked you to say a letter in 2 seconds and you said Z.
Q.
You lose.
Should have stuck with Q. Yeah, all the rest have got. So there's Albuquerque, which is also B. The C is Colorado.
Good afternoon, Craig.
Hi.
Last time we spoke about the modular programming paradigm, and then you had one last one we want to talk about.
And it's called object-oriented programming.
Yeah.
And this has been probably the most pervasive programming paradigm of the last 20 odd years. Probably 30 years.
Most programming languages people know will be object-oriented.
Yeah, most of the ones people use most at the moment are more commonly object-oriented. And it is in the decline, but it's still dominant by a long way. It will get replaced by perhaps a couple of other programming paradigms that will look like, not replaced, but become... it'll be more useful to use some other programming paradigms in more modern programming, particularly asynchronous programming, which we'll come on to. But it still has a hugely important place, and it's been so dominant, it's worth discussing. And it's object-oriented programming. It's actually quite a simple step if you go through all the other steps we've got to here. It says that, okay, we've been grouping together bits of functionality into a module.
Which was the last step we did.
Yeah. So the first step was, we just had code run in a certain order, and then we structured it so that you could branch and change direction and things like that, and go into loops and things like that.
Which could then be considered a section of code.
Yeah. And then what we said is, group those into procedures, bits of code that we can reuse all over the place.
So this group of code can be run whenever we want and not just...
And then that procedures, we grouped them. So there's a lot of grouping going on here. It makes sense. It's basically putting things together so that you can reuse them wherever you need them. And we called those modules.
Yeah.
And that's early libraries, etc. all have this modular. You can think of them as modules. Anywhere where you grouped a chunk of code and said, here's a group of code that acts on one particular problem space. And you can use that anywhere you do that problem space. You could create a logging module, for example.
Yeah. Anytime you want to log something, you just use that module.
Or you might create a module for dealing with floating point numbers. Floating points being as averse to integers, for example.
Anything with a decimal.
Yeah, or you might do a module to do calculus, or a module to do graphics, or all kinds of stuff. Module to interact with a console, or to do a printer, interact with printers.
Any series of functions or methods that you might want to recall.
Yeah, and you can imagine, for example, that there's loads of programs that want to interact with printers, and you don't want to rewrite all that code over and over again.
You don't have to write the implementation every time.
So you just create a module for that. Now, they might not call them modules, might call them different things, but the paradigm, the way we think about them, is modular. So the next step was just really rather sensible, which said, well, actually, most of the time, code is acting upon data or context. So it's acting upon a set, and most famously, Turing would describe a state. Yeah. So state of the system. So for example, when we were talking about the printer, for example, it would have data indicating whether it's on or off. Yeah. What size paper it's got in it, what kind of colours it supports, what is dots per inch resolution.
The methods you might call on independent of what is existing in real world.
So this extra bit of data is often useful to hold in the context of the procedures. And once you've got modules, effectively what we could do called scoping procedures, you actually have a scope there called a modular scope, which allows you to put data in that scope. But you can go one step further and actually bundle the data in with the methods themselves. So the procedures themselves, which we now call methods, and we've created a new concept called object-oriented programming.
And the object will be the methods and the data combined.
Yes. So it's data and the operations on that data combined together make up an object. And here's the interesting thing now, is that in each object, objects are defined as a class. Yeah. So we say a class defines an object, which says any class of this object will have the following data and
any object of this class.
Yes, so any object of this class will have the following data and the following methods, the following things that can act upon the data within that class. And
the common way to describe it is a blueprint for...
Yeah, it's a blueprint. So a good way of thinking this is you might have a class defined as a car, right? And it might have the following properties or data. So, and technically fields, but properties of how many wheels does it have? Because not all cars have 4 wheels. So you might want to say, how many wheels does it have? What was the manufacturer's name? What was the model?
What colour is it?
What colour is it, yeah? Is it left or right-hand drive? So these are all like characteristics, okay?
If you were to model a car in some kind of program, you'd have a car class that would hold this information.
Yeah. So what we're saying is the cars have these characteristics, these properties of them. And then we might have things we want to do with a car, like switch it on.
Yeah, and that would change the state from off to on.
Yeah, and we might want you might want to be able to turn left or turn right, and those are methods or operations that can occur in a car.
Yeah.
Now, an actual instance of a car, we call them instances, is an object. And an object would be an actual car.
Just because you can describe the properties a car has and things it can do doesn't mean you have one.
Yes. And you can have many instances of a car, and one might be a Ford Focus, one might be a Nissan X-Trail, and one might be a Kia Sportage.
But they've all got a number of wheels and a manufacturer and a model.
And so each one of those is an instance of a car class, and that instance is an object.
Yeah.
And we call those objects. And what you do is you instantiate a class to create an object. And that's a really useful concept for programming, and that's become very pervasive in the way we write a lot of code in modern, and it's what's taught at most universities. So it's a way of thinking about our code. But the key is each method is itself just built up of a structured programming. In most cases, with bits, and each structure has within it sequential programming.
Yeah.
And each object has in it procedures, which we call methods, because they're object oriented. And each object is itself a module.
Yeah.
If you want to think of it like that. And of course, you can also still group objects together in a module, which we call namespaces in object oriented in most programming languages. We call them a namespace. You've heard of Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think Bitcoin is?
I'm going to get it wrong now.
Well,
you put your money into it, and it's like online money,
yeah.
and it fluctuates, and it's kind of like a stock, and then you pull your money out. And
Well, I mean, Bitcoin would describe itself as a cryptocurrency, right? So it's just like a currency. Now, if you buy... most of your money, for example, that you have, is held in pounds sterling, yeah?
Yeah.
It's actually in a bank account, most of it. It's not sat in your pocket these days.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably got a few quid in your pocket.
No, I don't.
Okay. So most of it's sat in a bank account. All you owe is what you owe your bank, whatever, right? But that's in pounds. Now, if you go on holiday, say to America, you will buy US dollars.
Yeah.
But you don't get $1 for every pound. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, some bad deals, yeah. But, you effectively get whatever the current exchange rate is minus maybe a commission.
Yeah.
So the post office or whoever you go to will charge you a little bit for the fact that you're doing a conversion and they want to make some money out of providing that service to you. So, and then you'll pay an exchange rate. And the exchange rate basically says, well, $1.34 is equivalent to £1.
Right.
So if you give me £1, I'll give you $1.34 minus a bit of commission, right?
So can you buy stuff with Bitcoins?
Well, effectively, you and I could launch a new currency today if we wanted to and say we'll call it the DevDecoder currency. Right? And if we launched the DevDecoder currency, we could say to people, if you give me £1, we'll give you one DD.
One double D.
One double D. Right? A double D for DevDecoder. So you get one double D for every pound you give us. Now, it's a promise, effectively. If you think about it, you actually do this every time you put money into the bank. When you put money into the bank, they give you a promise that they will give you that money back if you ask for it. Right? That's all they're doing. But you don't have the money anymore. They've got it. So you could give us, for example, £1 and we'll give you one DD. It's like a credit note.
What if you wanted £40?
Then we'd give you 40 DD. Right? Now, the question that comes about then is, well, we could then say, anytime you ask for money back, we will convert your 40 DDs into £40. But let's say our DDs are becoming more valuable because we have limited DD stock available. Because, to be fair, you can only have so many DDs in the world. Well, then, the value of a DD might increase. And so you might have got 40 DDs when DDs were quite popular, quite available. All right. So, I mean, we could call them double Ds or something if that's so. These 40 DDs when you first got them were only cost you £40 to get them, but now that DDs have really taken off and everybody wants a double D, then actually 40 DDs now might be worth £80. So if you come to us and say, you know what, I'd like to sell back my 40 DD, you can sell them to other people that want DDs, but now they're paying you £2 a DD, and your £40 has now become £80, and that's effectively currency speculation. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you busily wanting and obsessing over DDs now?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so Bitcoin is just like DDs, is just a currency. Although the Treasury, for example, in the UK has said that they'd rather think of them as crypto assets, so not actual currencies, but there's all kinds of reasons they say that. But effectively, it's just like a currency. Now, the issue is that what you want, of course, in a currency is, in some respects, some people would want that currency's rate to stay stable. So in our little world, some people would want to say, if I pay £40 to get 40 DDs, I want 40 DDs to give me £40 back afterwards. So I can convert to and from that currency without any issues. Yeah. Right? So the question then is, well, can you pay for stuff in Bitcoins? Well, if somebody accepts Bitcoins, then you can give them Bitcoins for just like a trader might say, you can give me either $100 or £100. It's up to you, right? Now, $100 is nominally cheaper than £100 because you'd be better off taking your £100, converting it to dollars, and then giving them $100, right? But if you happen to have $100 on you, or you happen to have £100 on you, you might decide to pay in one of those things. Similar in a Bitcoin, as a trader, I might go, well, you can either pay me in pounds, or you can pay me in Bitcoins. I'll take the risk and convert those Bitcoins into pounds later.
So do people take Bitcoins? Yeah,
quite a few organisations have come out and said, we'll now take payments in Bitcoins, for example. Now, there's several reasons why people like Bitcoins. One is because they're not tracked and they're not owned by any particular nation, for example. So it allows particularly criminals, but they're not the only ones, to hide their money laundering and stuff like that. So they can, and this is one of the issues that countries are having with Bitcoins, because you can put all your assets into Bitcoins and it's harder to track people, theoretically. Not entirely true, there's all kind of caveats to this. The other reason is you may be the exact opposite. You might not be somebody who likes the fact that currency is stable. What you might want is it to be very unstable, because for every winner there's also a loser, but for every loser there's also a winner. So in the scenario we gave before, the person was clearly a winner because they bought our DDs when they were very cheap, so £1 a DD, and they sold them when they were very expensive, £2 a DD. So they doubled their money without actually doing anything other than buying and selling DDs, right? That is currency speculation, right? It's called speculation because when you speculate with a currency, you can win or you can lose, right? And people that are good at predicting markets and predicting the flow of things can generally win more often than they lose, and that's how a lot of speculators, trading floors, make their money. Okay. The problem with Bitcoins are, unlike currencies, which are tied to the strength of the economies, tied to monetary policy committee decisions, for example, tied to trade and all kinds of other things. So therefore, they are tied to something real, although there's some caveats to that because the trading itself affects them. So Bitcoins are not really tied necessarily to any solid thing. They are almost entirely tied to the speculation that occurs with them. So the more that people want to buy, the more expensive they are, and the less that people want to buy, the cheaper they are. Right? Actually, this is true in currencies as well to an extent. So they talk about confidence in the pound. You might have heard this. Is the confidence in the dollar or confidence in the pound? When people are deciding where to put their money, when large firms and banks are deciding where to put the money, they want to put their money somewhere where they have confidence that the value is going to be retained.
Yeah.
Right? And if everybody is more confident, for example, in the pound, then what you'll see is everybody buying pounds up because they want to put it in the pound because they're going to be confident it'll retain its value. But the problem with that is that everyone's trying to buy pounds, so the price of pounds goes up. right? So it's supply and demand. Whereas if there's a run on confidence or a lack of confidence, so it's not called a run on the confidence, there's a run on confidence on the pound, everybody's trying to sell pounds very quickly.
Like Brexit.
Yeah. Or, and lots of other things can cause a run on the pound, like financial crises and stuff like that. Brexit was a very good example, because when the vote came through for Brexit, there was a bit of a run on the pound and the value of the pound dropped. The reason the value drops is because everyone's trying to sell pounds and buy other currencies that they feel are going to be more stable. And in that scenario, because you're trying to sell it and everyone's trying to sell it, the value of those things get lower so people can get deals because everyone's trying to undercut each other.
Right.
So effectively the value goes down, right? Now, the beauty is on currencies, they're tied to much more than just the trading, although the trading does obviously impact on it. But if you've got a currency that's almost exclusively tied to it's not exclusive, I'm very simplifying, but it's almost exclusively tied to trading, it's a massive component, then that volatility becomes a lot higher. Volatility being how quickly it goes up and down and by how much, right? So think of if a currency is like a nice calm sea with waves on it, that's a stable currency. But if it's like a tsunami and it's going up and down by 2 minutes, it's flowing around and there's tidal surges and everything else going on, that's a bit like what Bitcoin's been over the last couple of years. Right? The value's shot up massively and then been lost massively, right? And then gone up again massively, then shut down massively. Now that's great if you're a speculator and you're a gambler and you're on the winning side, because you can buy at like $10 and sell at $17. But if you're someone who bought at $17 and now find it's $10 for Bitcoin, you're losing a lot of money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the issue is that it is too volatile for a lot of people and for a lot of regulators, and they think that this is something that needs more proper regulation. There's a lot of criminal elements going on. There's a lot of crime that's associated with Bitcoin and stuff like that that's not regulated. There's a lot of tax avoidance and all kinds of other stuff. So now governments are starting to look at Bitcoin as something that needs better regulation, but what that regulation looks like and where it comes out is one of those cases where this is not an easy problem to solve, and there's a real important law that politicians seem to forget at their peril in digital, which is the law of unintended consequences. They seem to be making a lot of decisions lately where they haven't really thought through all the impacts of those decisions, because they've not really understood what kind of impacts those decisions would have when they're making those decisions. Well, that was episode 17 of the DevDecoder podcast. Do you enjoy that this week?
Yes.
Why?
Because my facts stumped you and I've never seen it before.
Yeah, I find it's cute, but it's a bit, without knowing it off the top of your head, you have to figure it out. But we have gone through now and figured out a state for every letter but Q.
I helped quite a lot. You didn't really know many.
That's just so much. As soon as you kept naming places that weren't actually states, that wasn't very helpful.
One time.
Seattle is literally in Washington. By the way, Washington, the most helpful state for getting half the letters. And that's Washington State as well as Washington DC, which is not a state.
Ah, really?
Yeah, Washington DC is actually the District of Columbia is not in the United States. In terms of it's not in a state. So the capital is not in one of the states, which is deeply ironic because the whole point of, if you actually go into Washington, D.C., you'll see a lot of cars with number plates that say things like no taxation without representation, right? Because one of the founding principles, one of the reasons for the secession from the United Kingdom for the War of Independence was taxation without representation. But the capital of the United States, the citizens of the capital of the United States do not have representation because they're not a state.
Craig's Fact of the Podcast.
Yeah, they're governed by a mayor of Washington, and their budget is set directly by Congress, who they cannot elect members or representatives to. Mm-hmm. Similar, of course, is places like Puerto Rico and stuff, which also don't have representation because they're protectorate.
Moving on, yeah.
But Washington, the state,
it's still going. Yeah,
is actually on completely the other side of the.
I've been to Puerto Rico.
Have you?
Yeah.
It's not so nice recently after the hurricane, but it's still rebuilding. Did you go before the hurricane or?
Yes.
Yeah, I did, so that's good. So anyway, I hope our listeners join us again next week.
Woohoo!
And of course, they can find us on the usual podcasting and vodcasting platforms.
The end.